So just to be clear, my sort of formal experience with an actual vineyard consists mainly of boxes of raisins, the fruit bowl, a bottle of wine, visits to friends, community members, members of the church, who actually grow grapes and know what it is to tend them and how they work, and to go visit and walk down the lines and see how they stretch and how they grow. That, and then the battle to death, as I was saying, with those wild grapevines in the woods behind our house in South Bend, as I was saying with the young folks. But I don't have that experience of being the one to tend the vines, even though I know there are members who are here who do. We have members in our community who grow grapes and make wine, and they know what that is to tend and to walk. And so as they hear these stories of Jesus, they can probably see it. They can picture what Jesus is talking about. And that was absolutely the case in Jesus' day with the people that he is talking to here. Jesus says, I am the true vine and you are the branches. And for those who heard him, they could picture it because the vineyards were all the way around town. Up at the top of the hillsides, up above the wheat and barley fields, up at the top in terraces cut into the hills so that it would catch every drop of water. Where the soil, the roots could get down in the soil and the vines could grow the best. And they would have grown up and every day looked up to see the vine growers up there, tending, walking, looking. And when Jesus would say, my Father is the vine grower, oh, they knew him. They watched him. They saw him. They knew what a vine grower does. As he stands before the vines, reaches to the branches to check for disease, for bugs, to weigh the grapes and see how they are producing, as he measures how they are growing, and would stand studying, wondering, and how shall I fertilize? How shall I tend? What is it that this branch needs to help it become what it is meant to be? And when Jesus talks about my Father prunes the branches, they knew that too. They've seen it. How the vine grower would stand in front of the vines, before each branch, measuring and thinking back to the harvest that has just come in, and the one that is to come, thinking about how shall I tend and how shall I help these branches, this vine, to become what they were meant to be. And they could see that small knife that the vine grower would use, as he would very carefully, after studying and thinking and pondering and praying and wondering, and through his experience and his knowledge of the vines and the area, make his small cuts, pruning back the branches so that they could grow in the spring and be what they were meant to be. And they would know that even those branches, nothing is wasted in a vineyard, in those on the hillsides all around town. Even those that are not producing, those are the ones that are gathered to be fuel for the home, for cooking, to keep things warm, or there in the vineyard. For Jesus' hearers, they could see it. When he said, I am the vine, they knew that sort of thick rootstock, how it sort of corkscrews down into the ground, down to the roots that spread and collect, and from which the life comes up and out into the branches. They knew that branches disconnected from the vine cannot survive. That there is no life that's worth living apart from that vine and from its deep and living roots. And so when Jesus talks like this, his hearers, those who were there, they could picture it. They could see it because it was all around. This was ordinary life for them. But if you are like me, it's not part of my everyday existence. And maybe many of us are like that too, where we hear Jesus say these things and we don't quite see it because it's not part of daily life. We are, after all, 2,000 years and 6,000 miles separated from these scenes that Jesus describes. And so as we hear Jesus, I am the true vine, and we hear Jesus talk about pruning branches, especially in this country where we pride ourselves on being solo and individual and rugged and all that kind of mythology that we build up, we go right to the most striking, the most frightening vision, and we hear in this the sort of movie voiceover kind of deep resonant voice that says, in a world where you either bear fruit or you burn. Now, I don't have the voice, but you can hear it, right? We go right to that really striking image and we say, bear fruit or burn. And let's be honest, a lot of sermons have landed there, right? We've heard them all that says, boy, if we don't bear fruit and if you don't shape up, it's into the fire. Bear fruit or burn. Here's the thing. That's not what Jesus said. And it's worth remembering who's talking here. What Jesus said is abide in me, because I am abiding in you. And that's very different than this picture we sometimes get of God as angry and God as vengeful and God as sort of a capitalist who thinks of lives as commodities that if they don't produce, we can throw away. That is not the God that Jesus has shown us, is it? Jesus shows us something very different. And remember, Jesus is that revelation of God's heart. Jesus says, live in me because I most certainly am living in you. Jesus says, my life is in you. And so live your life in me. Abide and dwell and stay and remain in me because I am most certainly am staying with you. My life is yours. And so live in me. When Jesus talks about bearing fruit, that is the natural outgrowth of the life that's been put in us. It's what we are made to be. And yeah, every one of us periodically, I don't know, if you're like me, it seems to be on a cycle about every, day, couple days, weeks, when I will say, and I try to couch it in something nice, I'll say, Jesus, you've got so much going on and you take care of so many things. I'm just going to put down some roots over here. It'll make it easier for you, and I'll just, for your own good. And you know as well as I do that like a cut flower, I might bloom for a little bit. But it never works, does it? And always I have to come back to the vine that's waiting. The life that's given. The life, the only life that's actually worth living. And to regain my life through that true vine that's been waiting for me with open arms. Jesus says, I am the true vine. You are the branches. Abide in me. Live in me. Dwell in me. Remain in me. Find your life in me because I most certainly am living in you. I am there already. Holding you. Gathering you. supporting you, strengthening you. It is my life that flourishes through you. And when my life flourishes through you, bearing fruit is just who we are. It's what we were made to be. And so as we branches gather together today, as we get all knotted up together the way grapevines are supposed to, all of those branches twisting and knotting and braiding and knitting ourselves together so that we can hardly tell one from the other, and that together we are stronger and together we find more life. As together we gather as branches, there are two questions, only two, that we need to ask today. The first is this. We can each pause and reflect and think back and say, in the last 5 years, what things have been pruned out of my life? And what new fruits has Jesus brought in their place? What new fruits has Jesus brought in my life? And for that we can celebrate, because it is a sign of the vine grower who is tending to us and helping the life grow in us. We can celebrate that. And the other is like that, which says, in my life today, what are the things that are ready to be pruned? What do I need to prune? And what do I need pruned out of me so that new fruit can grow? And so that life can be more full. And we can celebrate that because, again, we have a vine grower who is attending to us and who is working on us so that we can become what we are made to be. Those are the questions for us because we are gathered as branches of the true vine. I'm going to say those again in case you want to write them down. So first of all, what in the past 5 years, as I stop and as I think, has been pruned away? And what new fruit has grown? We could ask that this week. We could dwell on that and think about that, and then we can celebrate for what God is doing. And then the second is like that. In my life today, what is it that is ready to be pruned? What is it that I need to have pruned so that new life and new fruits can grow? And we can celebrate that because we have a vine grower who wants that for us to be who we were meant to be. And so as we gather, we branches of the true vine, as we gather here to intertwine our branches in our lives and to be stronger that way so that we can hardly tell where one ends and the other begins, as we are knitted and knotted together as community, as the body of Christ, listen and hear what Jesus is saying to you today. Jesus says to you today, I am the true vine, and you are my branches. Live in me because I most certainly am living in you. Abide in me as I abide in you. Dwell in me as I am dwelling in you. Remain in me as I most certainly remain in you. I am there. And it is my life, Jesus says. It is my life that is yours. Thanks be to God.